The modern night is rarely truly dark, and it is never entirely silent. Even when the city briefly sleeps, there is a persistent hum, a restless vibration of endless connection that pulses through our walls and our glowing screens. We have built a world of perpetual motion, relentless pursuit that leaves us deeply exhausted yet entirely unable to rest. But what if there was a place where time simply stopped? A place where the suffocating noise of our era fades into an absolute and ancient stillness. It is 2 a.m. in San Francisco, and Sarah is still awake. At 45, she sits in the hollow quiet of a sprawling penthouse, a chief executive in the heart of Silicon Valley, who has achieved everything the modern American dream ever promised. Yet, as the thick coastal fog rolls over the bay outside her expansive windows, the only illumination inside comes from the cold blue glare of a smartphone resting on the pristine marble counter. It lights up silently once again, delivering another urgent notification, another breathless demand, another heavy tether to a world that simply refuses to pause. This is the tragic paradox of our modern hyper-connected age, a time when we possess infinite ways to communicate, yet we frequently find ourselves drifting in a profound, isolating ocean of solitary pressure. The relentless daily push for technological innovation, the endless optimization at every waking hour, has left millions chasing a distant horizon they can never actually reach. For Sarah, and perhaps for you as you lie awake tonight, the mind has become a crowded, brightly lit room filled with the echoing anxieties of tomorrow's obligations, making the simple, natural act of falling asleep feel like an impossible surrender. But the real secret is that an escape has always existed, hidden deep within the earth and buried beneath the crushing, silent weight of millennia. Long before the glowing screens, before the towering skyscrapers of glass and steel, and long before the very concept of time became a commodity to be traded, there was a sanctuary. It is a space completely devoid of the artificial urgency that defines our modern existence, offering a profound, enveloping silence that has remained miraculously undisturbed for tens of thousands of years. Tonight, we are going to leave the restless, exhausting energy of the modern city behind and travel backward through the vast, quiet corridors of time. We will slowly descend into a majestic world that existed 30,000 years ago, far beneath the forested, mist-covered hills of ancient Europe, where the earliest shadows of human imagination first flickered to life. Let the frantic pace of the present melt away into the shadows, as we step together into the profound, sheltering darkness of the prehistoric cave, seeking the ultimate peace that our distant ancestors once knew. To understand the profound, mysterious sanctuary waiting patiently within the dark earth, we must first cast our minds back 30,000 years to a frozen, unforgiving landscape. The world outside the cavern is a relentless, brutal theatre of harsh extremes, heavily dominated by the colossal, creeping ice sheets of the Paleolithic era. Blizzards sweep violently across the open tundra, carrying microscopic, sharp crystals of ice that mercilessly sting exposed skin and blind the eyes of wandering creatures. The sky above is a perpetual, heavy canvas of suffocating grey. It presses down upon a desolate wilderness where mere survival is a daily, exhausting battle. In this brutal environment, the jagged, black opening in the limestone cliff appears not as a geological formation, but as a silent, powerful invitation to escape the punishing fury of the elements. As you cautiously step over the damp, rocky threshold, and finally leave the blinding white glare of the snow behind, a profound physical transformation washes over your weary body. The biting, bitter chill of the glacial wind is abruptly severed. It is instantly replaced by an unexpectedly mild, stable warmth that seems to radiate smoothly from the very deep core of the subterranean world. This is a perfectly quiet realm, completely untouched by the violent changing of seasons. Here, the brutal winter storms raging mercilessly outside hold absolutely no power over the stagnant, heavy air resting quietly within the stone corridors. The suffocating brightness of the frozen tundra swiftly surrenders to a thick, enveloping blanket of deeply comforting shadows. This gentle, welcoming darkness silently commands your tired eyes to adjust to the deepening twilight. With every slow, deliberate step taken further into the limestone throat of the mountain, the heavy burden of the external world begins to physically lift from your shoulders. The most striking alteration, however, is not the sudden darkness or the comforting ambient temperature, but the drastic, beautiful shift in the auditory landscape that closely surrounds you. Outside, the violent gales of the Ice Age howl with a deafening, chaotic ferocity. They tear aggressively through the sparse, dead vegetation, and echo endlessly across the frozen canyon walls. Yet, as you venture much deeper into the twisting, narrow passageways of the ancient Chauvet Cave, that aggressive roaring gradually diminishes into a soft, distant, fading murmur. Soon, even that incredibly faint whisper is completely swallowed by the massive insulating layers of solid rock pressing in from all directions above and below, in the chaotic noise of daily survival and the constant state of exhausting hypervigilance required to endure the prehistoric wilderness simply cease to exist in this isolated, hidden sanctuary. You are left entirely alone in a vast, overwhelming silence that feels almost completely tangible, wrapping around your fragile consciousness like a heavy, protective velvet cloak. But here is where the experience becomes truly hypnotic. This profound silence is not entirely empty or dead, rather, it is delicately punctuated by a single rhythmic sound that serves as the heartbeat of the cavern. Somewhere in the unseen depths of the enveloping darkness, a solitary drop of mineral-rich water falls from a stalactite, striking a small limestone pool below, with a clear, resonant echo. This slow, steady dripping bounces softly down the curved rock walls, creating a mesmerizing acoustic loop that gently lulls the weary mind into a state of deep tranquility. It acts as the purest, most ancient form of a natural metronome, steadily measuring out the slow passage of time, not in frantic seconds or minutes, but in silent millennia. Listening closely to this solitary, repeating droplet, you can feel your own heartbeat instinctively beginning to slow down, perfectly synchronizing with the unhurried rhythm of the deep earth. As you continue your steady descent along the damp, uneven rock floor, the unmistakable scent of wet clay and crushed ancient minerals fills your lungs. This cool, earthy aroma grounds you with every deep, measured breath you take in the darkness. The pathway twists and turns in an intricate, descending spiral, gently disorienting your rigid sense of direction. It forces you to surrender completely to the safe, dark embrace of the subterranean maze. There is no urgency to be found here, and absolutely no predators lurking in the immediate shadows. There is only the vast, comforting weight of the massive mountain standing as an eternal guardian above your head. The further down into the abyss you travel, the more the distinct memories of the freezing, chaotic world above begin to permanently dissolve. They simply melt away into a meaningless haze of forgotten, distant worries. You are now fully submerged in an ancient, timeless void, suspended safely in a state of absolute peace, completely ready for the profound revelations ahead. When we imagine the lives of our ancient ancestors, a very comforting, familiar image usually comes to mind. We often picture them sitting peacefully around a crackling fire, safely sheltered inside a cozy stone room while a brutal storm rages outside. We naturally tend to view these rocky enclosures as humanity's very first natural homes. But was this pitch-black, suffocating subterranean world truly a safe haven for a fragile human being? The reality of the Paleolithic era paints a drastically different and far more terrifying picture. For the early humans wandering the frozen plains 30,000 years ago, stepping into a deep cave was absolutely not an act of seeking comfort. It was an act of actively defying their most fundamental primal survival instincts. To truly understand their specific psychological mindset, you must completely strip away the romanticized myths created by modern pop culture. In the unforgiving, brutal reality of the Ice Age wilderness, absolute darkness was universally synonymous with unpredictable death. Human eyes are biologically designed to seek the guiding sun, the pale moon, and the familiar open horizon. When those early nomadic hunters stood at the gaping, jagged entrance of Chauvet, they absolutely did not see a welcoming refuge. They saw a terrifying, bottomless void that actively threatened to swallow them whole. Inside that suffocating, oppressive blackness, their superior visual senses were instantly rendered entirely useless. Every echoing drip of freezing water or slightly shifting pebble could easily mask the silent, deadly approach of an unseen predator. Now listen carefully, because this hidden subterranean underworld was already permanently occupied by a creature perfectly born for the shadows. The deep, twisting caverns of ancient Europe were the undisputed, exclusive territory of the massive cave bear. These prehistoric, heavily muscled titans were significantly larger and infinitely more aggressive than any modern grizzly bear roaming the American wild today. They instinctively utilized these sprawling underground labyrinths to safely hibernate, to give birth, and to fiercely protect their vulnerable young. The suffocating darkness that completely stripped fragile humans of their senses was the exact environment where these giant apex predators thrived. Countless massive skeletal remains and deep scratch marks, permanently etched into the limestone walls, served as grim, undeniable warnings. Humans were absolutely not the rightful masters of this stone domain, yuft, but merely fragile intruders trespassing in a deadly den. It seems entirely illogical that any rational survivor would willingly walk into a pitch-black labyrinth already filled with giant, sleeping monsters. But here is where it gets interesting. The immediate physical danger of being violently mauled was only a small fraction of the sheer terror they faced. The true paralyzing horror was profoundly psychological, deeply rooted in the ancient human fear of the vast unseen unknown. To willingly cross that rocky threshold meant completely abandoning the familiar sky and descending straight into the crushing belly of the earth. It was a suffocating, completely alien realm where a single wrong turn meant wandering blindly in the dark until inevitable starvation or madness claimed them. They were certainly not seeking a comfortable shelter to rest their weary bones in. They were bravely stepping into the ultimate heart of darkness, completely surrounded by the heavy presence of invisible death. Deep within this suffocating, pitch-black labyrinth, every single breath felt incredibly heavy with the unbearable weight of primal anticipation. The small band of nomadic hunters stood completely engulfed by an oppressive darkness that seemed to physically press against their fragile, freezing skin. In this terrifying abyss, they were completely stripped of their evolutionary dominance, abruptly reduced to vulnerable prey waiting helplessly in the eternal night. Their trembling, frost-bitten hands fumbled desperately in the unseen void, urgently gathering small bundles of dry moss and brittle twigs brought from the freezing surface above. The sharp, rhythmic striking of flint against iron pyrite suddenly echoed sharply through the cavern, breaking the heavy silence with a frantic and desperate energy. Every failed strike of the stone was a terrifying reminder of their absolute vulnerability in this alien, hostile environment. They knew with absolute certainty that without the immediate creation of fire, this freezing, echoing chamber would rapidly become their permanent, silent tomb. Then, from the absolute depths of that crushing blackness, a tiny, fragile ember miraculously caught hold of the delicately prepared dry tinder. In a matter of seconds, that minuscule glowing speck fiercely erupted into a brilliant, magnificent bloom of golden orange flame. This was the precise moment the entire subterranean world experienced a violent, breathtaking rebirth that completely shattered the terrifying illusion of the dark void. The aggressive, flickering light violently pushed back the suffocating shadows, instantly chasing away the invisible monsters and lurking ghosts that had ruthlessly haunted their anxious imaginations. The previously bottomless, threatening abyss was suddenly illuminated, revealing the magnificent, towering limestone walls that gently curved inward like the massive, protective ribs of a sleeping ancient giant. The terrifying, endless unknown was abruptly replaced by the comforting, undeniable reality of solid, encompassing stone. The cavern was no longer a sprawling monster waiting to devour them, but a tangible, defined space that could actually be comprehended and temporarily conquered. But what happened next was a truly transformative psychological shift that altered the course of human history. The violent, biting cold of the Paleolithic wilderness was immediately forgotten as the intense, physical warmth of the blazing torches washed gently over their shivering, exhausted bodies. The damp, heavy scent of wet clay and decaying minerals was swiftly overpowered by the rich, incredibly comforting aroma of burning pine resin and charred wood filling the enclosed cavern. The terrifying absolute silence of the deep earth was instantly replaced by the cheerful, familiar crackling and popping of the lively dancing flames. For the very first time since crossing that dark, perilous threshold, their tightly wound muscles began to instinctively relax, and their frantically racing heartbeats finally slowed to a steady, peaceful rhythm. The roaring fire did not just brilliantly illuminate the physical rock formations, it completely reprogrammed their deeply ingrained survival instincts, loudly broadcasting a powerful subconscious signal that they were finally entirely safe. This glowing, vibrant circle of warmth rapidly expanded outwards, completely transforming the hostile, terrifying cavern into an impenetrable, glorious fortress against the merciless ice age. The massive, incredibly heavy ceiling of solid rock that had previously felt exactly like a crushing tombstone now served as an indestructible, comforting shield against the raging blizzards roaring far above. Within this radiant golden bubble of flickering light, the deeply weary hunters could finally lower their heavy spears, safely share their meagre winter rations, and looked directly into each other's brightly illuminated faces. The profound, paralyzing fear that had tightly gripped their anxious minds was entirely washed away by a deep, overwhelming sense of communal peace and unprecedented security. By simply daring to bring a fragile, flickering spark of light into the absolute darkest depths of the earth, they had successfully conquered the terrifying unknown. The deadliest, most frightening abyss in the frozen world had miraculously become humanity's very first sacred sanctuary. With the sacred sanctuary now fully bathed in the warm glow of the flickering torches, the suffocating darkness retreated into the unseen crevices of the colossal cavern. The massive limestone walls were once perceived as the crushing ribs of a terrifying geological monster waiting in the abyss. Now they were suddenly transformed into a majestic, sweeping canvas waiting patiently to be brought to vibrant life. The intense, golden light danced rhythmically across the damp, undulating surface of the pale rock. It slowly revealed a subtle, deeply deliberate alteration in the natural, rugged texture of the deep earth. This was absolutely not the chaotic, random scarring left by the violent tectonic shifts of the ancient world. It was rather the intentional, incredibly delicate touch of a conscious, deeply observant mind seeking to leave a permanent mark. What happened next will completely surprise you. Slowly moving the trembling flames closer to the towering geological formations, the nomadic observers witnessed a breathtaking metamorphosis. This unbelievable transformation entirely transcended the brutal reality of their desperate, freezing survival on the surface. Emerging directly from the shifting, hypnotic shadows were distinct, sweeping lines of deep charcoal and vibrant smears of crushed red ochre, creating a striking visual contrast. They were applied with an astonishing level of confident, masterful precision that completely defied all modern expectations of primitive man. The chaotic, frightening emptiness of the subterranean void was suddenly filled with the ghostly, majestic presence of magnificent beasts. These were the very same creatures that ruthlessly roamed the frozen, unforgiving American plains far above their hidden refuge. It was exactly as if the ancient, brilliant artists had not merely painted upon the cold, hard stone. They had somehow miraculously coaxed the very souls of the untamed wilderness out from within the solid rock itself. There, seemingly suspended in the eternal, silent gloom of the deep earth, a breathtaking procession of massive cave lions appeared before their widened eyes. They seemed to silently stalk their unseen prey across the sweeping, highly curved contours of the cavern wall with terrifying grace. Beside them, a stunning, beautifully rendered herd of wild, untamed horses seemed to gallop wildly into the eternal darkness. Their expressive faces and flared nostrils were captured with an incredibly profound, undeniable emotional empathy by the creator. The sheer staggering scale of these magnificent, towering frescoes commanded an overwhelming, immediate sense of primal reverence. They completely dwarfed the fragile human figures standing silently beneath them in the flickering, unstable golden light. Every single deliberate heavy brushstroke of deep black charcoal carried the profound, undeniable weight of careful prolonged observation. It revealed an intimate, almost spiritual connection between the vulnerable artists and the terrifying apex predators they intimately shared their dangerous world with. Here is where it gets truly interesting. As the unstable light of the burning pine resin violently danced across the meticulously drawn outlines, a startling mystery was spectacularly revealed to the modern mind. The ancient, visionary creators had deliberately drawn multiple, heavily overlapping legs and subtly shifted heads on the majestic animals. They intentionally utilized the natural, uneven contours of the limestone to create a highly complex, intentional optical illusion. When the warm, shifting glow of the firelight washed rhythmically across these specific, incredibly detailed charcoal lines, pure visual magic happened. The massive static beasts miraculously appeared to breathe, stride, and fiercely leap across the ancient, illuminated stone. Long before the modern, bustling entertainment industry of the American West Coast ever existed, a cinematic revolution had already occurred. These brilliant, completely unnamed ancestors had successfully engineered the very first breathtaking, cinematic animation in the entire history of human civilization. Standing silently before this staggering, vibrant display of primal genius, a deep, overwhelming wave of profound emotion completely washed over them. It entirely swept away the lingering, icy dread of the unforgiving, brutal Paleolithic winter roaring fiercely outside the cavern walls. The awestruck humans were no longer merely looking at rudimentary, desperate scratchings meant for basic survival and communication. They were instead bearing witness to a magnificent, transcendent declaration of humanity's beautiful and incredibly enduring soul. Through the impossibly simple, fragile mediums of crushed earth and burnt wood, these ancient individuals had successfully captured the dynamic essence of wild, untamed life. They immortalized it forever within the absolute, unchanging silence of the deep earth, creating a legacy that would outlast empires. The true identity of these brilliant, enigmatic artists, capable of such breathtaking, sophisticated observation across the millennia, remained a beautifully haunting puzzle. But why did they intentionally choose to leave their glorious, painstakingly crafted masterpieces in such an inaccessible, terrifyingly deep abyss? In our fast-paced, highly advanced modern society, it is incredibly easy to look back at the distant past with a supreme, unjustified sense of intellectual superiority. For generations, popular culture and oversimplified textbooks have consistently painted a rather demeaning, cartoonish portrait of our distant Ice Age ancestors. We have been culturally conditioned to imagine grunting, hunched brutes clad in ragged skins, capable only of violent survival and basic primal urges. This deeply ingrained stereotype suggests a primitive mind entirely consumed by the desperate, exhausting daily struggle against a merciless frozen wilderness. Yet, standing silently before these breathtaking, incredibly sophisticated frescoes, that arrogant modern assumption violently shatters into 1,000 unrecognizable pieces. How could mere, unthinking savages possibly conceive of such profound, transcendent beauty in the heart of complete, suffocating darkness? The sweeping, masterful lines etched into the pale limestone reveal an astonishingly elevated intellect and a deeply sensitive, observant soul. Long before the revered masters of the European Renaissance discovered the mathematical rules of perspective, these nameless artists were flawlessly executing it. They deliberately scraped the uneven cave walls to create lighter backgrounds, masterfully utilizing subtle shading to give the majestic beasts striking physical depth. Their visionary minds fully grasped the complex spatial relationships required to transform a flat rock surface into a living window into another world. They were absolutely not primitive beasts blindly mimicking nature, but highly skilled creators possessing a profound, intuitive understanding of visual geometry. Looking intimately at the delicate smudges of raw charcoal rubbed softly into the rock by human thumbs, the intimidating chasm of 30 millennia collapses. You immediately feel an intense, overwhelming psychological kinship with these nameless individuals who sought to express their complex inner world with undeniable grace. They experience the exact same profound wonder and passionate desire to create lasting meaning that drives our modern, individualistic society today. Their breathtaking genius completely forces us to humbly re-evaluate absolutely everything we thought we knew about the true dawn of human intelligence. But wait, here is exactly where the ancient narrative gets incredibly interesting for us. The astonishing visual brilliance of these magnificent ancient masterpieces is only a single fragmented piece of a much larger, enigmatic historical puzzle. If their primary goal was simply to proudly showcase their extraordinary artistic talent, they could have easily painted near the well-lit cavern entrance. Instead, they deliberately chose to carry their fragile torches into the most claustrophobic, perilous, and suffocatingly dark corridors of the subterranean labyrinth. Navigating these treacherous, winding tunnels required a tremendous amount of physical endurance and an unwavering, almost fanatical, psychological commitment to their mysterious craft. There had to be a deeply intentional reason they willingly risked their fragile lives to create such magnificent art in absolute pitch-black isolation. They were undoubtedly trying to secretly harness an invisible, powerful force hidden deep within the silent, endlessly echoing depths of the frozen earth. The astonishing visual brilliance of these magnificent ancient masterpieces is only a single fragmented piece of a much larger, enigmatic historical puzzle. If their primary goal was simply to proudly showcase their extraordinary artistic talent, they could have easily painted near the well-lit cavern entrance, where the pale winter sun provided natural illumination. Instead, they deliberately chose to carry their fragile, flickering torches into the most claustrophobic, perilous, and suffocatingly dark corridors of the subterranean labyrinth. Navigating these treacherous, winding tunnels required a tremendous amount of physical endurance and an unwavering, almost fanatical, psychological commitment to their mysterious craft. There had to be a deeply intentional reason. They willingly risked their fragile lives to create such magnificent art in absolute pitch-black isolation. But here is where the ancient narrative gets incredibly interesting for us. In our modern landscape of instant gratification, where art and entertainment are effortlessly streamed directly into the comfortable sanctuary of our homes, this level of dangerous prehistoric dedication seems completely incomprehensible. These nameless artists were not casually sketching on a lazy afternoon, but rather embarking on a terrifying descent into the suffocating belly of the earth. They were crawling on their stomachs through claustrophobic limestone veins, dragging heavy chunks of charcoal and hollowed-out bones filled with vibrant mineral pigments. It defies all conventional logic that a society supposedly focused entirely on sheer survival would expend such massive amounts of precious energy on something hidden so far away from the sun. Why would they purposely choose the most inaccessible, intimidating depths of the cavern to secretly paint their majestic beasts? Now listen carefully, because the answer entirely changes how we perceive our distant human ancestry. And modern acoustic researchers painstakingly mapped the winding subterranean chambers, meticulously testing the way sound waves violently bounced off the uneven, damp rock surfaces. They made a staggering, breathtaking discovery that immediately sent shivers down the spines of the scientific community. The absolute densest, most intricately layered clusters of breathtaking animal murals were not randomly placed based on the smoothness of the limestone canvas. Instead, they were deliberately positioned at the precise acoustic nodes of the sprawling cave system, entirely overlapping with the specific locations that generated the most profound, resonant echoes. This terrifyingly beautiful subterranean vault was never intended to be a silent, static art gallery politely observed by quiet, passive spectators. It was deliberately recognized by human genius as a vibrant, echoing concert hall, a magnificent primal cathedral of immersive sound. Imagine standing in the suffocating darkness while the rhythmic, hypnotic pounding of heavy wooden staffs strikes the hollow, resonant ground. This deep percussion would be beautifully accompanied by the piercing, haunting melodies of delicate flutes, painstakingly carved from the fragile wing bones of ancient vultures. The soaring acoustics of the limestone chamber would instantly catch those raw vibrations, infinitely multiplying the passionate chanting until the entire cavern physically vibrated against their shivering skin. In this carefully chosen acoustic sweet spot, the sensory experience would have been nothing short of purely hallucinatory and profoundly spiritual. As the echoing, rhythmic music aggressively swelled and bounced around the damp chamber, the fragile light of the roaring fire would rhythmically flicker in perfect harmony. These frantic, dancing shadows would dramatically cast themselves across the masterfully drawn charcoal lines, creating a breathtaking, supernatural optical illusion. It suddenly appeared as if the massive herds of painted bison and majestic lions were actively charging out of the solid, unforgiving rock. The thundering echoes of the tribal music would perfectly mimic the deafening roar of the painted stampede, entirely blurring the fragile boundary between the physical realm and the spiritual world. This wasn't merely a desperate struggle to survive the brutal, unforgiving Ice Age. It was a deeply sophisticated, incredibly beautiful celebration of living, breathing, and feeling in a harsh, chaotic universe. The absolute silence that tightly grips the deep cavern today is merely a temporary illusion, a frozen snapshot of a vibrant, thundering symphony that once endlessly played out in the darkness. For someone desperately seeking escape from the shallow, synthetic noise of endless digital notifications, the sheer depth of this ancient sanctuary offers a profoundly comforting perspective. The heavy, protective walls of the earth quietly absorb their beautiful raw melodies just as willingly as they now absorb our exhausting, modern anxieties. For over a century, pragmatic, modern scholars confidently assumed they understood the exact purpose behind these massive subterranean galleries. Textbooks boldly claimed that early humans were strictly utilitarian creatures who only painted what they desperately needed to consume. The prevailing theory suggested these intricate murals were simply a form of sympathetic hunting magic. We pictured our desperate ancestors sketching their future dinners on the damp limestone to manifest a bountiful harvest. But what happened next will completely shatter that cold, calculating perspective of our ancient human heritage. When modern archaeologists meticulously sifted through the frozen dirt of the cave floor, they uncovered a startlingly different truth. They analysed the scattered bone fragments left behind by these ancient artists to understand their actual daily diet. The astonishing results proved that these nomadic tribes primarily consumed common reindeer and small regional game. Yet, if you closely examine the majestic walls of Chauvet, those mundane prey animals are almost entirely absent. Instead, the artists obsessively painted towering woolly rhinoceroses, massive cave bears, and fiercely graceful panthers which they actively avoided hunting. Why would a starving Ice Age society spend its most precious resources rendering deadly predators they never intended to eat? The deeply moving answer strips away our modern arrogance and reveals the pure, unadulterated soul of early humanity. They did not drag their fragile bodies into the suffocating darkness to cast petty spells for food or physical survival. They ventured into the terrifying depths out of a profound, overwhelming sense of spiritual reverence. These magnificent predators were painted precisely because they were deeply admired, feared, and respected as divine equals. This staggering realization fundamentally changes the entire narrative of human evolution from a brutal struggle into a beautiful awakening. Our distant ancestors were not mindless brutes solely driven by the biological urge to feed their starving stomachs. They were highly sensitive, incredibly observant dreamers who felt an intense psychological need to capture beauty. They deliberately created art for the sheer transcendent joy of creation itself, leaving behind a timeless legacy of pure wonder. Their breathtaking masterpieces prove that the inherent human desire to express profound emotion is far older than civilization. There is something incredibly liberating about knowing that our earliest recorded thoughts were not driven by selfish consumption or greed. In a society obsessed with relentless productivity, this sanctuary powerfully reminds us to pause and appreciate beauty. The nameless artists of the Paleolithic era found boundless inspiration in the terrifying beasts that roamed the frozen tundra. They poured their entire souls into the limestone canvas, without ever expecting any material reward or historical recognition. They simply painted their beautiful truth, safely locking their vibrant dreams in the eternal embrace of the earth. The final flickers of the charcoal torches eventually dwindled into glowing embers as the artists laid down their primitive tools for the last time. They walked out of that magnificent limestone cathedral with quiet reverence, stepping back into the freezing winds without ever looking behind. The heavy darkness immediately rushed back in to reclaim the vast chambers, swallowing the majestic painted lions in an impenetrable blanket of shadow. The vibrant prehistoric sanctuary was left entirely alone, wrapped in a profound stillness that was isolated from the brutal elements ravaging the world outside. Now listen carefully, because the profound transformation that followed this departure would forever alter the destiny of this sacred artistic haven beneath the mountains. High above the entrance, the massive limestone cliffs had been weakened by thousands of years of relentless freezing and thawing cycles across the bitter winters. Without any warning, a catastrophic collapse shattered the icy landscape as tons of heavy stone violently detached from the mountain facade looming above. The thunderous avalanche of rock crashed down with unimaginable force, obliterating the original entrance and sealing the gallery away from the outside universe. Thick layers of dense clay and crushed stone instantly formed an airtight barricade that locked the vivid masterpieces safely inside the earth. The swirling snowstorms were abruptly shut out, leaving the delicate charcoal strokes perfectly insulated within a completely stable and controlled subterranean environment. For the next 30,000 years, absolutely nothing disturbed the breathtaking slumber of these subterranean galleries as the chaotic world above evolved relentlessly. Entire civilizations would rise and violently fall into ruin, yet down in this forgotten sanctuary, not a single breath of wind ever stirred. The towering glaciers eventually melted entirely, transforming the freezing tundra into lush green forests, teeming with completely different forms of biological life. Through all these monumental planetary shifts, majestic painted panthers simply waited in the darkness, preserved by the constant cool temperature of the stone. The only measurement of time was the incredibly slow dripping of water falling softly from the ceiling to the damp floor in perfect silence. Here is where the story deepens, as the total absence of human interference allowed nature to slowly reclaim the space through microscopic geological creation. Tiny crystalline formations gradually blossomed across the damp limestone walls, softly sparkling in the pure darkness like stars scattered across an endless subterranean midnight sky. The accumulation of calcium carbonate gently draped the ancient masterpieces in translucent veils, seamlessly merging human imagination with the patient rhythm of the earth. The cavern was breathing at an impossibly slow pace, exhaling quiet tranquility, while wrapping the magnificent painted creatures in a shimmering cocoon of solid rock. Bowen. This gentle process ensured that the fierce lions would remain completely untouched by the corrosive forces of decay, sweeping across the turbulent surface world above. This endless stretch of unblemished silence transformed the cavern into a timeless vault, where the chaotic anxieties of existence simply ceased to hold power. The heavy limestone walls functioned as an invincible fortress against time, creating an eternal night that embraced the artwork in a gentle, protective sleep. Even the microscopic footprints left behind in the soft clay by a curious child remained flawlessly crisp, suspended in a state of beautifully frozen stillness. Every stroke of red ochre and black charcoal was thoroughly shielded from the sun, allowing the vibrant ancestral visions to rest in peace and harmony. The deep earth softly cradled these glorious memories in suspended animation, offering a perfect model of absolute tranquility and undisturbed rest for anyone seeking peace. The profound silence that guarded the subterranean sanctuary for 30 millennia was finally shattered on a crisp December afternoon in 1994 by three passionate French speleologists. Jean-Marie Chauvet, Eliette Brunel-Deschamps, and Christian Hilaire were systematically exploring the rugged limestone cliffs, overlooking the meandering Ardèche River gorge in southern France. Driven by an insatiable curiosity and a keen eye for subtle geological anomalies, they noticed an almost imperceptible draft of cool air escaping from a narrow fissure in the rock face. Recognizing the classic signs of an underground cavity, they immediately set to work, clearing away centuries of accumulated debris and loose stones to widen the opening. As the tight passage finally gave way, they squeezed through the narrow bottleneck one by one, holding their flashlights aloft to pierce the absolute darkness awaiting them on the other side. Stepping cautiously into the uncharted void, their first sweeping beams of light revealed an astonishing expanse of untouched chambers that stretched far beyond the limits of their modern equipment. But what happened next will completely take your breath away, transforming a simple cave exploration into one of the most monumental archaeological discoveries in human history. As they advanced deeper into the cavern, the beam of Eliette Brunel-Deschamps' flashlight suddenly swept across a smooth vertical wall, catching the unmistakable glint of red ochre. There, illuminated in the stark white glare of modern technology, stared the magnificent and terrifying face of a woolly rhinoceros, rendered with astonishing artistic brilliance. The explorers froze in stunned disbelief, slowly realizing that they were standing in a pristine art gallery that had remained completely undisturbed since the last ice age. Moving forward in a state of reverent awe, the three speleologists documented an overwhelming bounty of prehistoric masterpieces, covering nearly every available square foot of the limestone surfaces. Hundreds of meticulously detailed animals emerged from the shadows with every sweep of their lights, depicting powerful lions, graceful horses, and imposing mammoths frozen in eternal motion. The sheer artistic mastery displayed across these damp walls challenged every established theory regarding the intellectual capacity and cultural sophistication of early human societies. Yet, the most profound emotional impact came not from the grand murals themselves, but from the astonishingly fragile and intimate physical traces left behind by the ancient creators. Detailed analysis by incoming archaeologists soon uncovered the unmistakable footprints of a young child walking alongside an adult across the soft clay floor thousands of years ago. The preservation of these delicate impressions was so remarkably perfect that it felt as though the artists had simply walked out of the cavern just moments before the modern team arrived. Scattered across the subterranean chambers, the explorers also found the cold remnants of ancient hearths, alongside discarded flint tools and torches that still smelled faintly of burnt wood. It was an eerie, transcendent encounter with the distant past, dissolving the vast ocean of time that separated modern humanity from its ancient ancestors. The scent of fresh charcoal dust still lingered faintly in the still, heavy air, creating an intimate bridge across 30 millennia of silent evolution. Standing in that subterranean sanctuary, the researchers understood that they were not merely examining dead artifacts, but were directly sharing a sacred space with living, breathing human souls. This extraordinary rediscovery profoundly altered our collective understanding of human history, shifting our perspective from a narrative of raw survival to one of deep creative awakening. The fragile footprints in the clay and the magnificent charcoal drawings served as an eternal testament to the enduring power of human imagination across the ages. Even as the outside world rushed forward into a new digital century of relentless speed and technological complexity, this hidden limestone vault remained an untouched sanctuary of pure wonder. The delicate balance of the cave environment was immediately recognized as a priceless treasure requiring unprecedented protection from the disruptive presence of modern tourism and atmospheric contamination. Sealed behind heavy security doors and monitored by specialized climate control systems, the subterranean gallery was safely returned to its eternal sleep. Yet the echoes of those ancient brushstrokes continued to ripple across the globe, forever reminding modern humanity of its deep creative roots buried deep within the earth, far away from the ancient French limestone walls. A bright smartphone screen illuminates a silent penthouse overlooking San Francisco. Here sits Sarah, a technology executive whose brilliant mind remains trapped in a relentless loop of urgent emails. She deals with mounting corporate pressures while the rest of the bustling city slumbers peacefully below. Have you ever wondered why modern productivity feels so utterly suffocating during the lonely hours of the night? For Sarah, glowing notifications representing quarterly revenue targets create a synthetic storm mirroring an ancient winter. Yet, across a vast ocean and 30,000 years of history, Chauvet offers a liberating perspective. This deep historical connection gently pulls her weary consciousness away from the flashing digital displays. Now listen carefully, because the true magic of these subterranean echoes instantly shrinks our modern corporate anxieties. When Sarah lifts her tired eyes to gaze out at the sleepless skyline, a profound realization takes hold. Are those midnight deadlines truly as monumental as they appear during these exhausting hours of solitude? The magnificent painted lions carved into the dark earth provide a reassuring answer from the dawn of humanity. Those ancient artists faced terrifying survival struggles, yet chose to spend their precious moments crafting breathtaking beauty. They understood that human existence requires far more than mere biological survival or relentless work. Their timeless artwork stands as a brilliant testament to the enduring power of creative expression. This staggering realization allows Sarah to finally loosen her grip on the exhausting pursuit of absolute perfection. The chaotic noise of Silicon Valley begins to fade into a gentle hum of historical context. Her individual ego dissolves effortlessly into the wide, beautiful river of shared human experience. Just like the anonymous prehistoric creators, she realizes her true worth is never defined by corporate metrics. The ancient cave offers a soft permission slip to simply breathe, let go, and rest. Her professional achievements suddenly appear wonderfully small against the majestic canvas of deep geological time. She recognizes that letting go of control is the ultimate form of personal liberation. The heavy burdens of corporate leadership and perpetual anxiety lose their suffocating grip on her soul. The profound wisdom of the Paleolithic era wraps around her weary mind like a warm blanket. She turns off the glowing screen, plunging the modern room into a comforting, protective darkness. The frantic pace of the century dissolves, leaving only a timeless stillness guiding her toward restorative sleep. Every lingering worry about tomorrow's board meetings vanishes into the quiet shadows of the room. Her breathing slows down to match the steady rhythm of the distant underground drip. Peace finally settles deep within her heart as the long night takes over. Imagine your own mind as a vast, quiet limestone cavern hidden deep beneath the earth. Heavy stone walls close out the rushing noise and neon lights of the modern city. Every racing thought and urgent email is left far outside in the cold night air. Nothing can penetrate this ancient boundary of solid rock and protective silence. You are standing safely inside a sanctuary untouched by the passage of time. The chaotic demands of your daily routine cannot cross this natural threshold. Here the air is clean, cool, and filled with a profound sense of ancient peace. You can finally lower your guard and abandon every lingering burden of responsibility. Take a slow, deep breath and feel your shoulders drop away from your ears. Imagine the cool, crisp air of the underground chamber filling your chest with complete calm. In the distance, a single drop of water falls into a still pool of crystal clear liquid. The soft, rhythmic sound measures the slow passage of your peaceful moments. Each drop erases another layer of tension from your tired muscles. Your breathing naturally mirrors the unhurried rhythm of the dripping water underground. With every exhalation, You sink deeper into a state of profound physical relaxation. The surface world feels impossibly distant, separated by miles of solid, comforting stone. There is nothing else you need to solve or manage in this quiet space. The demands of tomorrow fade into harmless shadows along the dark, curved walls. You can release every expectation and let your weary body grow entirely heavy. The soft dust of the cave floor cradles your spirit in total safety. You are completely hidden and completely protected within this timeless vault. No notifications can reach you through the thick layers of ancient limestone. Your mind becomes as still and clear as the underground pools of water. Every of worry simply evaporates into the quiet space surrounding your resting form. Faint traces of ancient charcoal rest quietly in the dark corners around you. They remind you that humanity has always sought rest after the long day ends. Your eyelids grow heavier as the soothing darkness wraps around you like a blanket. Every heartbeat slows down to match the steady, peaceful pulse of the earth. You drift further into the deep, restorative quiet of the subterranean world. The flickering shadows of long-forgotten torches dance gently across the stone ceiling. A sense of profound security settles deep within the core of your being. You are held by the same earth that sheltered human dreams 30 millennia ago. Let the remaining fragments of the waking day dissolve into nothingness. The cavern doors are firmly sealed against any returning worries or noise. Only gentle stillness and unbroken peace remain in this sacred underground refuge. Your mind drifts deeper into the soft velvet embrace of profound slumber. Sleep claims you fully, carrying your spirit into a night of absolute rest. The steady dripping of water becomes a soft lullaby in the darkness. You are safe, you are warm, and you are completely at peace. Let go entirely and let the deep silence welcome you into sleep. As the night stretches on, the sanctuary remains perfectly still and undisturbed. No light disturbs the quiet dark, and no sound breaks the ancient spell. Your breathing remains slow, even, and entirely effortless in this protective embrace. The weight of the world rests safely outside the heavy stone walls. You continue to drift through the quiet corridors of your resting mind. Rest well within the timeless safety of the earth's deep, cool heart. Let every muscle surrender completely to the soothing quiet of the night. The warm amber glow of the prehistoric torch slowly softens against the ancient stone. Tiny sparks drift upward like sleepy stars before vanishing into the heavy shadows. The final whisper of burning wood dissolves completely into the cool underground air. Darkness gently reclaims its eternal domain across the silent limestone chambers. Every trace of flickering flame surrenders to the profound, unbroken night. The last faint embers turn to cold grey ash beneath the sleeping rock. Only a single sound remains to mark the slow passage of hours. A single drop of water falls into a hidden pool with rhythmic precision. The gentle splash echoes softly against the curved walls of the deep vault. Time loses its frantic edge in this timeless sanctuary of stone and shadow. Your breathing matches the quiet cadence of the dripping water without any effort. Every remaining tension melts away into the velvet coolness of the resting earth. The steady sound becomes a soft heartbeat guiding you toward deep slumber. 30,000 years have passed since human hands last touched these painted walls. Yet the quiet bond connecting our modern hearts to the past remains unbreakable. The art in the dark reminds us that we belong to a long, beautiful story. No deadline or burden can ever erase the deep creative spirit within your soul. You carry the same quiet resilience that sheltered our ancestors through the ancient ice. Let that realization hold you securely as the night deepens around your resting form. The echoes of history whisper softly through the quiet dark. The ancient cavern holds you in a safe and protective embrace. Every anxious thought from the waking world dissolves into the quiet shadows. You are completely removed from the noise and speed of modern life. The thick stone walls act as an impenetrable shield against any disturbance. Rest comes easily when your mind finds such deep and total safety. Nothing requires your attention right now except the gentle rhythm of your breathing. The world outside can continue its restless spinning while you rest in profound peace. The heavy stone doors of the subterranean sanctuary are firmly sealed against every worry. Allow the gentle darkness to carry you into a deep, uninterrupted slumber. May the quiet stillness of the earth guard your dreams until the morning light arrives. Rest now with a tranquil mind and a completely relaxed spirit. Let every lingering thought drift away on the wind. I wish you a truly calm and peaceful night.